So, welcome to What Are You Grateful For? My name is Eleanor, and I'm the creator and host of this podcast today. And before we get into today's episodes, I did have two announcements to make. My first announcement is that I'm releasing a spiritual hygiene box, and if you're interested in receiving a clearing candle, a clearing bath, a 15-minute mini reading by me, as well as a surprise gift inside, I ask you to go ahead and visit my Etsy store, and so you can put yours on pre-order today. If you do pre-order it by December 15th, it should be shipping out to you, and you should get it before Christmas, and you should also get it obviously for sure, definitely before New Year. Now, my second announcement is I ask you to follow me on my social media platforms. All my handle is at the Spiritual Beauty Queen, and you can find me on Instagram, YouTube, as well as TikTok. Now, let's get into today's episode. So, today's episode is season 1, episode 7, and we're going to talk about how to vet people. The reason why this conversation came up is because I actually was in the middle of a tarot reading the other day, and I was really inspired to talk about how I learned how to vet people. I think that in the spiritual community, there are a lot of people who could be vulnerable in terms of emotion, and it's not just within the spiritual community. I think it could be happen to anyone, honestly, where there is a lack of understanding on your own value, so it's harder for you to it the task for you is to learn how to vet people and create boundaries. And that is something that I had to learn because I love with my heart, all my heart, and there are times that I tend to give more of my relationships than I receive. And although it's okay, um, I can say that I've learned over the years how to vet people. And the reason why I got more serious about this is because I started to understand my value and what were some of the non tangible things that I brought into a relationship. And it made me second guess it made me second guess myself into why, or how rather, like, why would you put yourself in these types of relationships? And I'm not just talking about platonic or romantic relationships. I'm talking about all types of relationships, whether it's, at your job, best friend, boyfriend, family, friends, like close relatives, any type of relationship that you can think about. Why was I being treated in a certain way, and why didn't I feel appreciated? And I know spiritually, something that I'm aware of as well, is that I have a very trusting nature. And I I have such a trusting nature that it can be confused with negativity, but I'm not. I just love people. I love people in a way that I'm passionate about people, I should say, rather. I'm very passionate about people, and I'm very passionate to help people. I'm very passionate in, like, just getting to know people and learning from them. And I think that sometimes with that passion, there are qualities about me that's non tangible and that can grow continuously, that I didn't realize, those were good qualities to have. And when I understood how valuable I was as a person, I kind of decided that I had enough, you know? And non tangible things are, the ability to nurture, the ability to listen, to be supportive, to be kind, to be thoughtful. These are things that I would say are non tangible things that I know I offer in relationships. And I often had rose colored glasses on because I was like, I never thought of myself I never thought of myself in terms of valuable. I never thought about that. And I didn't see it, and I couldn't understand why certain themes were presenting itself in my friendships. Excuse me. And once I realized that and I unlocked it inside, I just was like, oh, hell nah. Like, we got to change. And through a lot of introspection and getting to know who I am and, learning more about myself and learning how valuable I am, learning how worthy I am, there's a certain level. I don't have tolerance for certain things anymore. I don't have tolerance to, accept certain behaviors, especially if it cross my boundaries. And there are times where I may slip up on my boundaries because I like somebody and because I'm like, wow, I really like them. Like, we're vibing. But I always have to remind myself boundaries are here to protect me. And a red flag is a sign to either communicate and talk about it or walk away. But a red flag is a red flag. A red flag is a red flag. And it is okay to walk away from relationships like that, especially if you see a red flag and if you feel that there was some sort of communication that was meant, but there isn't change, then you can walk away too. It's also too, like, as a woman, learning to use your discernment to figure out what type of relationship is worth for you to invest in and what exactly are you looking for. So that brings me into my list. So with this list, I'm very rational as well as technical. Well, I'm very rational. And there are times where, like, things need to make sense for me in order for me to be able to process something and essentially just move on from the situation. So one day I was browsing social media and I found a list of things. And this list is standards, deal breakers, expectation, and preferences. And each section, each number on the list, again, standard, deal breakers, expectations, and preferences, 1, 2, 3, 4, is teaching you, or let me actually clip this so I could delete this. Okay, perfect. So now the list is standard, deal breakers, expectations, and preferences. And what I did was I wrote down each definition. I wrote down the word, the definition, and then I started writing down what each of my what were my things according to the category that I have. And it was so profound for me because it made it a lot easier to understand what I was looking for in relationships. Now, I think it's very important to note right here, whatever I look for in a relationship, whether platonic, romantic, friends, family, whatever, these things that I'm looking for are also things that I know that I can offer as well. I'm not looking for something that I can't offer. And I don't mean that it's not seen or shown in the same way. What I mean is that I know that I can be honest. So I'm asking for, in my relationships, to be honesty. I know that I'm open minded. So I'm asking for my relationships to reflect my open mindedness. And these are things that I know that I can provide that is non tangible, that I'm asking to see in any type of my relationships. So let's get into number one. So number one is standard. And the definition of standard is defined as an average, normal, requirement, quality, level, grade. This is the quality or behavior that one must exhibit and have. And I put that as my standard. That was standard. And my standards, I'm sorry, I took a pause, y'all. So my standards were, for example, they must be consistent with their actions and their words. They must be, another one was they must show reciprocity. They must have healthy coping skills. They must have healthy mental, emotional, and physical state. They must be kind, courageous, and giving. These are some of the standards that I have because I know that I also have these things. I know that I have healthy coping skills. I know that I'm healthy mentally, emotionally, physically. And if I'm not, I also know because I have healthy coping skills, I can figure out a way to balance all areas of my life. And these were my standards. These are something that I'm expecting. And that's just it. These are my standards for myself, and these are some things that I'm expecting because, again, standard is defined as an average or a normal requirement, quality, level, grade, or etc. This is like going to the grocery store and saying, I like organic, field, free range eggs. This is a quality that I require, and I choose not to do anything else. This is a standard for me. That is what a standard is. So these are these were the standards I defined at the time in my life that I felt like, I had enough. And these were some standards that I created. Now you can go back and recreate your standards if you want to because you do change and you do grow. So certain things that, you had a standard as maybe as an early adult at 25 is going to be different when you hit 30. And if you are, if, for example, a divorcee, now your standard when it comes to relationships are going to be different because you had a lot to learn. So your standards are something I wouldn't say is necessarily permanent, but they can change as you grow through life. And I think it's important for everyone to define their standard because your standard is also going to give you the notion or the idea of what your deal breakers are. So I'm going to go ahead and go into deal breakers. So deal breakers are according to what I wrote down for the definition, deal breakers is something that will cause a person to abandon a plan, mutual arrangement, agreement, or relationship. Again, it is defined as something that will cause a person to abandon a plan, mutual arrangement, agreement, or relationship. And I broke down deal breakers into two categories. I needed to know what were my deal breakers, i.e., my red flags. What were something that if I saw this would be a huge red flag for me, and I would have to take a pause and reassess this relationship. What was something like that for me? So then I also had green flags. Green flags are things that we love, things that we're looking for that fill our loyalty account. And how I broke this down is I'm happy I said loyalty account because red flags are going to deduct from your loyalty account because loyalty, you don't have to stay loyal to a person all the time. You don't have to be committed to a relationship when they're not loyal to you as well. And loyalty looks different for everyone. And what adds to your loyalty bank account in the relationship? How are you adding to it? And how is the other person adding to it too? If they add to it, we give them green flags. Because the purpose is here is like, I understand that I've been hurt in past relationships, but this was very healthy for me to help me not be so hyper vigilant in someone new coming into my life. That was the purpose of this list. Not to be so hyper vigilant in who's coming into my life and walking away from a relationship that could be potentially profound and impactful for me. But because I didn't heal, I wasn't able to move forward. So again, I broke down deal breakers into two categories. Deal breakers is one, a red flag, and two, things that we love, green flags. And each time a person does something that we love, we give them more money in our loyalty bank account. But as they continue to deduct, then there's going to be a certain level. Each person is different where you know that there has to be a conversation or a complete walk away from the relationship. And you could have, different levels of red flags. You could have a third tier where an immediate walk away, there's no excuse. Or you could have a one red flag where it's kind of silly. You talk to them about it, but you understand it comes from a place maybe of insecurity because past relationships or whatever the case may be. Yeah, know yourselves. I figured that red flags were super easy for me to understand because I don't know what I do know what I don't want. Like, I can tell you what I don't want, and it was pretty easy. So green flags were just a little bit harder for me. So some red flags for me were someone who was closed-minded, someone who's judgmental, controlling, inconsistent, and cynical. Those were things, and also guarded. Guarded was a really big thing for me. I felt like being guarded was a red flag. And it made me ask, is this person willing or capable and has the space in their heart to be in a relationship? Again, this can go for any type of relationship. Now, another example for deal breakers for me was someone who has a low vibrational mindset. I can't be around that because I'm very optimistic. I understand the difference between realism and optimism, but that was like a big thing for me. So, of course, we have our green flags. And again, this adds to the loyalty bank. So, something that I said, my green flag was someone who's consistent, sincere, laid back, funny, predictable. And someone being predictable isn't bad. It's not about being boring, it's about understanding how they're going to react. It's not about understanding the person, it's about understanding how is a person going to react. Because if you made a mistake, your mom or your caregiver could be like, it's okay, like I still love you, no problem. And there's a work through that relationship. Where versus someone, one day you tell them you made a mistake and they're angry, versus another day that person is like, okay, whatever. So predictability was something that I liked. Again, it's not about being boring, it's about knowing that it's about knowing their character, because someone's character is predictable. Now, the third thing that we have was expectations. And before we go to expectations, something that I want to say is that I understand that if someone continues to show me my deal breakers, my red flags, that they cannot meet my standards. I understand that. If someone consistently shows me that they, continues to give me red flags, at this point, I will take a step back and I would say, like, you know what, this person gave me more than one red flag. It is now the time for me to take a step back and, not put so much energy into this relationship because I don't think it's going to serve me. And that's just it. Before you get too emotionally involved, you want to be aware of how someone is treating you and what type of decisions they're making and who they're showing you they are. Now, let's get into expectations. So expectations is defined as expecting, to look forward to, regard as likely to happen, anticipate the occurrence or the coming of. The Latin root word of expectation is to look out for what awaits. This is essentially your desires. So something that I desired was someone who's financially secure, and I put that someone who had little to no debt, an adequate emergency fund, the bills are paid on time, can pay for monthly expenses, and the net worth is growing each year. This is something that was an expectation of mine, because I know that someone, because I have really great red flags as well as green flags. And I know that if someone is showing me their red flags, I can't expect them to meet my standard, and I can't expect them to meet my expectations. And now expectations, I feel like it's a very thin line about what your expectations are, because you could have certain expectations of a relationship where you know that it's like, nah, I should have never expected this, or just like, like, everyone has the expectation to be treated like a decent human being. It's a average, it's a common expectation, and I think that's fair. Like, I expect someone that I'm going to be in a relationship with to have personal goals. Like, I want you to be ambitious and to want to have a desire, a drive to do something more with your life. And however that may look at whatever point of your life you're in, you know, an expectation to be emotionally available, to be vulnerable, to be open. Because again, a red flag for me was to be guarded. And if you're not guarded and you're someone who's open, then having the expectation that you're emotionally available isn't crazy, because you're showing me green flags that you do have great coping skills, you are honest, you're sincere. So having the expectation for that person to be, open and honest, to be emotionally available, isn't really so much far of a stretch. So hopefully that makes sense with the expectations. Now, the last category and how I did it is preferences. This is the last category. Let's get into what our preference is. So a preference is to prefer, to like better, to choose rather that. Now, preferences are the least of your worries in this list, because once a person has or exhibits, your green flags, they meet your standards, they meet your expectations, you're good and gravy, and you can move forward. And your preferences really don't matter. So if you prefer someone, let's say like your preference is to date someone 6'3", but the person in front of you is actually 6 foot, it's not going to matter, because you know that they continue to show you green flags, they meet your standards, they meet your expectations. Who cares if they're not 6'3"? It doesn't matter. So preferences are the least of, I feel like, the least of the concern of the group. But again, it's just something what you prefer. And I always say, like, I prefer green flags. I prefer someone to meet my standards, and I prefer someone to meet my expectations. Just like that, as long as it's within, like, again, it's a thin line with expectations. And that was it. Those were the things that I wanted. And those were the things that were, well, I can say my preferences. Like, I prefer someone who was culturally aware, and someone who's not a picky person, like someone who is curious about different things. I prefer someone to have, like, for us to have similarities but different passions. I really love learning. Like, teach me about something that you're passionate about that I may not be passionate about and you want to teach me about. That's amazing. Someone who, like, I prefer someone who is, like, healthy, like physically fit, and doing their thing. And physically fit looks different on everyone. Again, like, someone who is fit in a sense where they're gonna go to do physical activities, where it's like hiking, going to the gym, however they like to do. But someone who's like that, and that was a preference. But again, a preference is just a preference. And someone who's like, I feel like it's up in the air, because I understand that once everything else comes through, then, like, the universe is going to provide. And I hold that very loosely. I hold it, like, my preferences very loosely, because I understand that the universe always has better for me. Like, just when I think I know, they just have better for me, like way better than I ever expected. And yeah. So I'm so happy that I was able to share this list with y'all. And this is something that I use to just, again, vet people in my life and decide whether or not, like, I want to continue to, invest my energy in having them in my life. that's just basically it. Like, do I want to continue to invest myself, my energy to have this person in my life, especially if they may not be like the one for me right now? That's okay, because it's easier to walk away in the relationship when it's in the beginning versus the time that you spent time investing and, you know, doing what you do. There could be a sense of resentment too if you stay too long, or, you know, coulda, woulda, shoulda. So I learned how to do these things, and I learned this because it made it easier to not feel bad walking away from someone that you love, and knowing that, wow, like, you know, I got a green flag, this wasn't a good sign, I keep getting them, and I should just walk away. And also helped me understand that I had the tools not to be so hyper vigilant. Helped me understand that I didn't have to be like worried about every person coming into my life, and, you know, just assuming things that definitely wasn't healthy or good for me. So it made it just a lot easier to be more authentic in how I'm meeting people, and just to be more organic in the in you know, in the motion of it, So I hope that this episode brought you value. It is a little longer than I normally would have liked. I try to keep my episodes like, you know, less than 30 minutes. But again, if you're hanging out with me to the end, I really appreciate you. And I can't thank you enough for joining my community. I really do hope that these episodes bring some type of value to you, and it encourages and inspires you to change. I really just want people to know that they're so amazing and that they deserve the best. And I hope that through my mistakes and through my encouragement via social media, via podcasts, you see how awesome you are, and look forward to changing and just knowing that you're so deserving. Again, my name is Eleanor. Thank you for joining me for, oh, actually, sorry. The last segment of my podcast always is just to ask the audience, you know, what are you grateful for today? I'm really grateful that I got up and I worked. I found, you know, I do Instacart and Spark Driver on the side to supplement my income, to, you know, continue to be on the route of entrepreneurship. So I'm really grateful for that. I'm grateful for the money I made because I could pay my bill. Ooh, excuse me, I'm sorry. And I could just move forward. So yeah, grateful for that. So I hope, you know, what are you guys grateful for? Again, my name is Eleanor. The last two announcements I like to make is the same two that I made in the beginning. If you're not following me, I ask you to follow me, subscribe to my page. My handle on all of my social media platforms is at the Spiritual Beauty Queen. If you do, I want to say thank you again for, you know, joining my community. I really appreciate you, and I'm happy to have you here. My second announcement is check out my spiritual hygiene box. This is, you know, spiritual hygiene is super important, especially as we go into the new year. It is going to contain a clearing candle, a clearing bath, a 15-minute mini reading by me, as well as a special gift. So hopefully you like it. And if that's something that you are interested in, check out my Etsy shop and you'll see that it's there. Thank you again. I appreciate y'all. Have a nice day.